Open your medicine cabinet right now. Go ahead, look at it. A bottle of ibuprofen, some throat lozenges, a pack of Band-Aids, maybe a prescription antibiotic your doctor called in last week because you had a cough that wouldn't quit. If you get a fever tonight, you take a pill, wrap yourself in a blanket, and wait it out on the couch. If it gets bad enough, you drive yourself to a building full of people whose entire job is to keep you alive. You have never once, in your entire life, genuinely believed that a cough might kill your whole village. But to your deepest ancestors, the ones who built the world you inherited, that was not paranoia. That was Tuesday. So how did ancient humans actually survive the world's first true pandemic? The answer would horrify most people alive today. Scientists have recently found the proof inside mass graves scattered across Europe and Asia, proof hidden inside ancient teeth, in the DNA of the long dead, that changes everything we thought we knew about our own survival. To understand it, we have to go back to the exact moment humanity accidentally built the perfect killing machine. For millions of years, your ancestors lived in small nomadic bands, 20 people, maybe 50. They followed the herds, tracked the seasons, and never stayed anywhere long enough to leave a permanent mark on the landscape. If a lethal pathogen mutated in the wild, if some novel sickness jumped from an animal into a human body, it might tear through one hunting party and kill every single one of them. And then it stopped, because there was no one else within walking distance. The vast, empty space of the prehistoric world acted as a natural firewall. Sickness ran out of people to jump to. It burned hot and fast, and then it burned out. The species kept moving. The species survived. That system worked for a very, very long time. Then we broke it. Around 5,000 years ago, humans did something completely unnatural. We stopped moving. We cleared forests. We dragged stones. We pressed mud into bricks and stacked them into walls, and we called those walls home. We planted crops in rows and watched them grow and decided, for the first time in our entire history, that we didn't need to go somewhere else to find food. This was the Neolithic Revolution, and every history class tells you it was one of the greatest achievements in human civilization. Agriculture, permanent settlement, the birth of complex society. What every history class leaves out is what happened to human bodies almost immediately afterward. Because we didn't just settle down. We brought animals inside with us. We slept feet away from pigs and cattle and goats. We breathed in their breath. We stepped in their waste. We lived alongside their fleas, their lice, their rats. We built our cramped, unventilated huts in the middle of our own refuse heaps, and we packed thousands of humans into spaces that had never been designed to hold them. For the first time in history, a pathogen didn't have to go looking for its next host. The next host was sleeping 3 feet away. That is when the program glitched. Inside these settlements, something ancient and patient began to change. A primitive version of Yersinia pestis, the bacteria we now call the plague, had existed in rodents for millions of years. It was dangerous, but contained. Fleas carried it. It killed rats. Occasionally it killed a person who got too close. But crowded together in those mud brick settlements, breathing recycled air, sleeping next to livestock, surrounded by rodents that had never before lived in such density, the bacteria mutated. This was not the bubonic plague of medieval Europe, the one that rode on fleas and turned lymph nodes black. This was something earlier, something in some ways worse. This strain learned to travel through the air. It learned to live in the lungs. It spread not through a flea bite, but through a single cough in a crowded hut. And by the time anyone knew something was wrong, the hut next door was already infected. Archaeologists call what happened next the Neolithic Decline. Across Europe and Asia, thriving settlements went silent. Not slowly, suddenly. Archaeologists have found entire villages where every single house was burned to the ground with the belongings still inside. Not looted, not abandoned over time, burned. The grain was still in the pots. The tools were still on the tables. The survivors didn't stop to bury their dead. They threw the bodies into collective pits, sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds, and then they torched the village to kill whatever invisible demon had taken everyone they loved. And they ran into the woods, and they did not look back. They had no concept of germs. They didn't know what a bacteria was. They didn't know what a virus was. They knew only that the air inside their homes had become poison, and that the only way to survive was to get as far away from it as possible. Some of them made it, but not many. Here is what those who survived could not possibly have understood about themselves. They were not lucky. They were different. The first pandemic acted as a massive, violent genetic sieve. It didn't kill randomly. If your specific genetic makeup lacked a particular defense against this new respiratory pathogen, you died within days. Your children died. Your siblings died. Your entire line, in the span of a single season, was erased. Only a tiny fraction of humans, people who happened to carry a rare, random mutation in a specific part of their immune system, could fight off the infection long enough to survive. Not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, because of something written in their biology that they hadn't chosen and couldn't see and didn't understand. Those people lived long enough to have children, and those children inherited the mutation, and those children had children. This process repeated itself across centuries, across every new outbreak, across every pathogen that swept through the growing settlements of the ancient world. Wave after wave of disease, wave after wave of death, and at the end of each wave, the only people standing were the ones whose immune systems had been built, by random chance, to endure it. That is the secret running inside your body right now. You are not here because your ancestors were brave. You are not here because they were wise. You are here because they were, by pure, brutal accident of birth, genetically equipped to survive a catastrophe that killed nearly everyone around them. Your white blood cells are still running a defense program that was written in blood inside a burning Stone Age village. But that program came with a cost that nobody warned you about. Scientists have discovered something unsettling in recent years. The exact genetic mutations that allowed your ancestors to survive those first pandemics are the same genes now linked to modern autoimmune disorders. Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis. These conditions are not accidents. They are, in a terrible and precise sense, the price of your existence. Your immune system was calibrated for maximum aggression 5,000 years ago, and it has never been fully recalibrated since. It is still scanning for a plague that no longer exists. It is still primed for an enemy that hasn't walked through the door in millennia, and when it finds nothing, it turns inward. It attacks your joints, your intestines, your own tissue, because it was built to attack, and it was never told to stop. You are, in the most literal biological sense, a survivor of a war that ended thousands of years before you were born, and you are still carrying the wounds. Think about that for a moment. If you took a modern human, you, with your ibuprofen and your antibiotics and your doctor on speed dial, and dropped them into a Neolithic settlement during the first pandemic, you would likely be dead within weeks, completely defenseless against pathogens your immune system has never encountered in their original, unmutated form. But if you dropped one of those Stone Age survivors into a modern city, they would think they were surrounded by gods. A population that doesn't fear the winter, that treats infection with a small pill, that keeps its dead alive for decades past what any human body was ever supposed to endure. For thousands of generations, every human who ever built a fire, every human who ever buried a child, every human who ever watched a village burn, all of them lived one bad cough away from the end of everything they knew. Most of them didn't make it. The ones who did are the reason you exist, and somewhere in your DNA, in the immune cells that wake up every time you get sick, in the autoimmune conditions that some of you are managing right now, the evidence of that survival is still written. You might be the first generation of humans in history who genuinely doesn't have to fear the thing that almost ended us, and you have absolutely no idea how rare that makes you.